For more, let's speak to our Brussels correspondent, Dave Keating. Dave, in, out, in between, tell us a bit more about this transition period.
Yeah, I mean, the EU27 leaders were hoping that they would get some reassurances from Theresa May last night that a deal is possible. They were disappointed. She really didn't say anything new, according to sources in the room. The one new thing that she offered during her speech was this offer to extend the transition time. Now, she had 30 minutes before the EU27 leaders talked amongst themselves to try to convince them. She took only half that time, 15 minutes. And in it, she made this offer, or kind of a suggestion, that she would be willing to extend the transition period. Now, what is the transition period? It's an agreement, a tentative agreement that the EU and the UK have already worked out, by which the UK would continue to stay part of the EU single market, follow all EU rules. Basically, nothing will change after March 29th, Brexit Day, except that the UK no longer gets a vote in EU policymaking. So no more votes in the European Parliament, no more European Commissioner, but for 2 years, the UK will continue to abide by EU law. Now, that's to smooth the transition so there isn't any sudden cliff edge. Now, it should be said, the transition period only kicks in if a deal is agreed, and no deal has been agreed yet. What Theresa May suggested last night is she would be willing to extend that transition period for another year, so to 3 years. That would give the two sides more time to come to a free trade agreement, something to govern their relationship after Brexit. But this is going to be controversial at home for her.
And Dave, whether you're for or against Brexit, extending this transition period sounds like it's just prolonging Brexit limbo. It would cost more as well. Tell us a bit about who the winners and losers would be from such a move.
Yeah, I mean, it should be said, this really doesn't solve anything when it comes to the backstop issue. That's the Irish border issue that seems really intractable. I mean, whether you extend it by another year or not, you're still left with the same problem that the EU is refusing to accept a hard border on the continent of Ireland. But the transition agreement, the key thing is that it gives extra time to come to some kind of arrangement. Now, the reason Eurosceptics back at home in the UK don't like this is because they're very worried that the UK is going to end up in perpetual transition. That because Theresa May and people doing the negotiations on the UK side, they see this as an undeliverable. They're just going to find a political way out of it by saying, oh, we're having this transition period. 10 years later, they're still in the transition period. So that's their fear. On the EU side, they don't really care how long the transition period is. So this isn't much by way of a concession to them. If anything, it makes things easier for the UK. The only thing that this does help a little bit is giving more time to solve that Irish border issue and preventing a hard border on the island of Ireland. But again, it's just more time. It doesn't actually solve the problem itself. So EU leaders last night weren't terribly impressed with this. They only spoke until 10:30. We were expecting them to go a lot later. They're coming back here. They should be arriving in about 20 minutes back here to the European Council building. They'll have more discussions, but really, given that Theresa May didn't really offer anything new of substance last night, there's not much for them to talk about.
All right, Dave, thank you very much. Dave Keating reporting at the calm before the storm out of Brussels.